The courtroom was unusually silent that morning, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel loud. People had come expecting drama, but no one expected the kind of truth that would change lives before the day was over. As the judge took his seat, a woman in the second row tightened her grip on the bench. Her name was Aisha, and she had not slept properly in weeks. Across the aisle, dressed in an expensive cream-colored suit, sat the mistress Zara, wearing a faint smile that suggested she already believed she had won. Aisha's husband, Cameron, avoided looking at either of them, his eyes fixed on the floor like a man hoping the ground would open and swallow him whole. What no one in that room knew was that a single recording, hidden for years, was about to turn the entire case upside down and expose a truth so raw that it would leave one woman unconscious and another begging for mercy. This case was not just about divorce. It was about betrayal, gaslighting, and a woman who had been made to feel invisible for far too long. Aisha had stood by Cameron for 15 years. Through financial struggles, family pressure, and countless excuses, she believed in patience, in fixing things quietly, in keeping the family together at any cost. When rumors of an affair first reached her, she dismissed them as lies. When the late nights became normal and the phone passwords changed, she blamed stress. By the time she discovered the truth, Cameron had already built a second life with Zara, a woman who knew he was married and enjoyed the power that knowledge gave her. Zara didn't hide her confidence in court. She leaned back comfortably, whispering to her lawyer, smiling every time Aisha's hands trembled. As the hearing began, Zara's lawyer painted Aisha as unstable, overly emotional and manipulative. He suggested that Cameron had been pushed away by a controlling wife and found comfort elsewhere. Each word felt like a slap. Aisha tried to stay strong, but the weight of years of silence pressed down on her chest. When it was her turn to speak, her voice cracked. She talked about sacrifices, about nights spent waiting, about children who asked why their father was never home. The judge listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Cameron finally spoke, offering a rehearsed apology that sounded empty even to himself. Then Zara was called to the stand. She spoke calmly, confidently, claiming she had been misled, that she believed Cameron was separated, that she was also a victim. Her smile returned as she stepped down, certain that sympathy was now on her side. It was at that moment that Aisha stood up again, unplanned and unsteady. She asked the judge for permission to submit one final piece of evidence. Her lawyer looked surprised. This had not been discussed. The judge nodded slowly. Aisha reached into her bag, her fingers shaking as she pulled out a small USB drive. She explained that years ago, during a time when she felt something was wrong but had no proof, she had started recording conversations in her own home, not to trap anyone but to protect her sanity. The judge signaled to the clerk. As the recording began to play, Aisha's face drained of color. The voice that filled the courtroom was Cameron's, relaxed and laughing, speaking to Zara on the phone late at night. He talked about how his wife would never leave, how she was too weak and too scared. Zara's voice followed, mocking Aisha, calling her pathetic, celebrating the thrill of taking what wasn't hers. The room froze. Aisha swayed, her breathing shallow, and before anyone could reach her, she collapsed onto the floor. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as paramedics were called. Zara's smile vanished, replaced by panic. The recording continued, now revealing discussions about money, lies told to family, and plans to push Aisha into accepting less than she deserved. The judge raised his hand to stop the audio, his face stern with controlled anger. By the time Aisha was revived and helped back to her seat, the energy in the room had completely shifted. The woman who had been painted as weak was now the one everyone looked at with respect. While Zara avoided every gaze, her confidence shattered. The judge adjourned the session for a short break. But the damage was already done. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread like wildfire. For the first time in years, Aisha felt seen, even through the haze of exhaustion and humiliation. She had passed out not because she was weak, but because she had carried too much alone for too long, and the story was far from over. When the court reconvened, the judge spoke with a gravity that silenced every sound. He addressed Cameron directly, questioning his character, his honesty, and his treatment of the woman who had stood by him for half his life. Cameron broke down, tears streaming as he admitted to manipulation, greed, and cowardice. He confessed that Zara had always known the truth, that they had laughed about Aisha's trust, and that the recording was real. Zara tried to interrupt, but the judge stopped her sharply. Her lawyer whispered urgently, but there was no escaping what had been revealed. The judge then turned to Aisha, his tone softening, acknowledging her patience, her pain, and her courage in finally speaking up. The final ruling came like a wave of relief. Aisha was granted full financial rights, compensation for emotional distress, and primary custody of the children. Cameron was ordered to attend counseling and faced legal consequences for fraud and emotional abuse. Zara, exposed and humiliated, left the courtroom in tears, no longer smiling, no longer powerful. As Aisha walked out, supported by her lawyer, people made space for her, some even nodding in quiet respect. She didn't feel victorious in the traditional sense. She felt free. That night, as she sat alone, Aisha reflected on everything she had endured. She realized that strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent endurance. Sometimes it is surviving another day. And sometimes it is finally choosing yourself. Her story spread, inspiring countless others who had been told to stay quiet, to endure, to accept less. And if you're watching this story and it resonates with you, remember to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us we are not alone. In the end, the hidden recording was more than evidence. It was a mirror, forcing everyone to see the truth they had tried to ignore. Aisha didn't just win a case. She reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her future. And the message was clear. No smile built on someone else's pain lasts forever. And no truth stays hidden when it's time for justice to speak. She passes out in court. Mistress smiles until the judge plays. The hidden recording. If this story touches your heart even a little, like the video, share it with someone who needs strength today, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. The night after the verdict, Aisha lay awake staring at the ceiling, her body exhausted but her mind racing. Winning in court had not magically erased 15 years of pain. The silence in her home felt strange, almost too loud. Yet for the first time, it did not feel heavy. It felt honest. She replayed the judge's words in her head, not as validation from a court, but as proof that the truth she had buried inside herself for so long had finally been heard. Outside, the city moved on as usual. But inside Aisha, something had shifted forever. She knew the hardest part was not the courtroom battle. It was learning how to live again after betrayal. In the days that followed, messages poured in. Some were from relatives who had once told her to adjust and stay quiet, now suddenly proud of her courage. Others were from strangers who had heard about the case and saw their own lives reflected in hers. Mothers, wives, daughters, all telling her the same thing. Your story gave me strength. Aisha read every message slowly, tears falling not from pain this time, but from connection. For years she had felt invisible. Now she realized how many people had been silently watching, silently suffering just like her. Kamran, meanwhile, spiraled. The man who once controlled the narrative of his life now found himself alone, judged not only by the court but by his own conscience. Counseling sessions forced him to confront uncomfortable truths. He began to understand that his biggest loss was not money or reputation, but the respect of his children. When they asked him why he hurt their mother, he had no answer that could justify the damage he had done. For the first time, he felt the weight of consequences that could not be undone with excuses or charm. Zara's fall was quieter but no less painful. The confidence that once defined her vanished overnight. Friends distanced themselves. Whispers followed her everywhere. And the thrill she once found in secrecy turned into shame. She tried to convince herself that she had been in love, that she too was a victim. But the recording echoed in her mind, exposing intentions she could no longer deny. Power built on someone else's pain had left her empty. For the first time, she faced herself without the illusion she had carefully maintained. Aisha focused on rebuilding. She redesigned her days around peace rather than fear. Morning walks became moments of reflection. Small routines, making tea, reading, laughing with her children felt like quiet victories. She enrolled in a course she had once abandoned because Kamran didn't approve. Each step forward was slow, sometimes shaky, but real. Healing was not dramatic. It was patient. It was choosing yourself again and again, even on days when doubt crept back in. One afternoon, while organizing old papers, Aisha found the notebook she had kept during the darkest years of her marriage. Pages filled with questions, apologies she never owed, and reminders to stay strong for the family. She read it carefully, then closed it for the last time. That version of her had survived, so this version could live. She didn't burn the notebook in anger. She placed it away gently, honoring the woman who endured when leaving felt impossible. Months later, Aisha stood in front of a small audience at a community center, invited to speak about emotional abuse and self-worth. Her hands trembled at first, just like they had in court, but her voice didn't break. She told her story honestly, without drama, without blame, just truth. She spoke about silence, about the cost of staying quiet, and about the courage it takes to finally say, enough. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, not because her story was tragic, but because it was real. As the lights dimmed and people lined up to thank her, Aisha smiled. Not the kind of smile Zara once wore in court, but a quiet, grounded smile that came from self-respect. She understood now that passing out in court had not been a moment of weakness. It had been the release of years of suppressed pain, and standing back up afterward had been her rebirth. If you're still watching this story, remember this: strength doesn't always look fearless. Sometimes it looks like trembling hands, a breaking voice, and the courage to press play on the truth. Like the video, if you believe healing is possible, share it with someone who needs hope. And subscribe for more stories that remind us that even after betrayal, life can begin again, stronger, wiser, and finally free.